UFC 327 went down last night in Miami, and this was a card that on paper to me was very interesting. And in my opinion, as a whole, I'd give this about a 7 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10. And honestly, as someone who is biased, I think everyone that watches the UFC is a bit biased, right? If you like a fighter and they lose, then it, kind of diminishes the card a little bit. I'm not going to sit here and act like this was the worst card I've ever seen, but this isn't, the top of the mountain Kilimanjaro level peak. But it was a very fun time, and while I was wrong about the main event, I made a video that basically said, hey, Jiri is going to dominate Carlos Ulberg. I thought as long as this gets out of the first round, as long as we get, in the middle of the second round, I think Jiri is going to start hitting his flow state. I think he's going to cook, and I think he is going to knock out Carlos Ulberg. Obviously, that is not how things played out. I did put on Twitter that who I projected was going to win all of the fights. And I was right about every single fight on the main card outside of the main event, which was the fight that I cared the most about. And sadly, Jiri ends up losing to Carlos Ulberg. And honestly, as a big fan of Jiri, this was just disgusting. It was a terrible outing from Jiri Prochazka. This was a win that was basically served up on a golden platter, and he ends up messing it up, right? Let's just get into it right now. Obviously, we see performance of the night goes to Carlos Ulberg, and that makes perfect sense. Carlos Ulberg just had a miraculous win. There is no other way of putting this other than this was a miraculous, crazy upset. Now, I get going in, this fight's basically a pick-up, -110 for Jiri, -110 for Carlos Ulberg. This thing starts off, Jiri is fighting well. Now, I'm not saying this was a Jiri masterclass, but Carlos ends up messing up his knee. So this is looking like, hey, Jiri's going to coast to victory. This is going to be as free of a win as it gets. I'm sitting there as a big fan of Jiri thinking this might be the easiest title win I have seen in a while. Again, it was served to him on a platter. And Jiri Prochazka, instead of just continuing to hit the guy's knee repeatedly, instead of staying at distance, he decides that, hey, let's go for that knockout. Let's go ahead and put ourselves in disastrous scenarios up against Carlos Ulberg. Let's just walk directly into his best asset. Let's just go directly into a left hook. He walks into it and he gets sent to the Shadow Realm. He is looking like the Headless Horseman. He got knocked the fuck out in a scenario where he should have easily won. And that is the most frustrating part about this as a fan of Jiri, because this was a layup. This was a slam dunk, okay? And he somehow still messed it up. He messed up a easy win. And this is not to take credit away from Carlos Ulberg, because not giving up when your knee is already busted, not giving up when you can barely stand on one leg, and still sending that shot to knock Jiri out, following him to the ground, making sure that there is 0% chance that he loses the fight. It was incredible. It was an incredible feat for him to be able to overcome what happened, basically off Jump Street, and to be able to win. It sucks for Jiri because, again, it's a layup. If this fight happens again a year plus from now, because of the fact that, Carlos Ulberg messed up his knee, he's not coming back in a month. He's not coming back in 3 months. He's probably not coming back for a year. So in my opinion, they probably end up stripping him. I think we could see Jiri versus Big Ank, something like that, Ankalaev. And then maybe we see Ulberg 2-3 fights from now away from Jiri. But this was a bag fumble of momentous magnitude, right? This is something that doesn't happen, right? You don't get, imagine if we saw the fight between Van and Pantoja, right? Imagine if Pantoja fucked his arm up, got up, and just kicked Van directly in the face and knocked him out cold. Imagine if that's what happened, right? That's basically like what we just watched with Ulberg. It is incredible. And the worst part about this, again, is that it's not just Ulberg won. Not just, hey, Ulberg beat Jiri. Jiri basically beat himself. It was like he committed seppuku in the octagon. It's unbelievable that that is what happened. and it is. Carlos Ulberg is the light heavyweight champion, and I am not a big Carlos Ulberg guy. I think he's a good fighter. I just don't find him to be the most interesting kind of guy. I think Jiri is very interesting. He's out in the wilderness training, doing all types of crazy shit that you will never see out of any other fighter. He's an awesome guy, and it just sucks to see him lose like that. It sucked to see him after the fight basically crying because he sold. He sold himself up the river because he didn't just stand at distance and keep kicking the leg, chopping down the tree. Shout out Joe Rogan. Instead, he just blitzes him and gets knocked the fuck out instead of, keeping his hands up. All he had to do was keep his hands up, and that is avoidable. That is avoidable, but instead he walked directly into the trap like a mouse going to the cheese, and it's over. So, Jiri, it sucks. I think he's going to get a chance to become champion again. Will he fumble it for the third time in a row? We shall see. But congratulations to Carlos Ulberg. And again, while that might not have been the most amazing fight ever because of the fact that Carlos was hurt a majority of the time, the fact that Carlos was able to win, something you can never take away from him. And, there's going to be a lot of talks about how, hey, was Jiri Prochazka ever even good? Did Jiri deserve this title shot? Right? People are going to be saying that. A lot of people are saying that. Not me, but a lot of people are saying that. Then we move down the card to Paulo Costa versus my homie Azmat Murzakanov. Now, this was interesting. This was a very interesting fight. I came into it. I put my picks on Twitter. I did make a video about how I thought Jiri was going to dominate. Obviously, that doesn't end up happening, but I put my picks out on Twitter. I got every fight on the main card correct except for Jiri. I picked Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa was a big underdog, and I was very excited to see this because everyone basically had Paulo marked as dead, right? DOA, dead on arrival. There is no way that Azmat is going to lose this. He's on this win streak. Paulo is, Paulo Costa, right? I don't think anyone ever actually trusts the guy. And, it's 1-1 going into the third round, right? This is anyone's fight. Hey, the third round here, we will see who's going to take over, who is going to win this fight. I personally thought Paulo kind of looked like he blew his load, metaphorically, of course, going into the third round. He looked gassed, and in third round, he must have done, they must have shot him up like, Drago in Rocky IV, right? That is what they did to Paulo Costa because he came out there looking super sane. He came out there looking like a completely different beast, and it was over quickly in the third round, 1 minute and 23 seconds in. Murzakanov is hurt, and he's out. He's down for the count, and this was, again, not necessarily a masterclass from Paulo Costa, because I do think his fight previous to this was more of a Paulo Costa masterclass showing. This wasn't necessarily belt to ass, where for the whole entire fight, Paulo's dominating, but he looked incredible in the third round. I thought he had his spots in the first and the second round. Again, I thought it was 1-1. Tied fight going into the third round. And I think this really does push Paulo into, another magnitude here at the light heavyweight division. I don't necessarily think that they're going to push him for, Paulo Costa versus Jiri or Paulo Costa versus Ankalaev, but that's definitely possible. I think it would be very stupid for Paulo Costa to go down. He's a guy that not necessarily is excellent at cutting weight, let's just be honest. So I'm very excited to see what he does at light heavyweight. That was a great showing out of Paulo. And again, a lot of people were just flat out wrong about this fight. And I'm very interested to see what he does going forward because, again, I've always been a big fan of Paulo Costa. And it's going to be interesting to see how long Azmat is out after that injury. Then we move down to Curtis Blaydes versus Josh Hokit. This was fight of the night and performance of the night for Josh Hokit. And this is another one where basically before the fight, everyone's saying Curtis Blaydes is going to wipe the floor with this Make-A-Wish version of, the Temu version of Kobe Covington. That's what they're calling Josh Hokit. They're saying that Josh Hokit is a fraud. He's fugazi. It's a wazi. It's a woozy. And we saw what happened in this fight. Now, again, this is technically one where it's not necessarily belt to ass because if you could see, 214 total strikes connected for Curtis Blaydes, 181 for Josh Hokit. But in my opinion, Josh Hokit really had some strong showings here. And I'm also not too sure how rocked Hokit actually was in this fight because he kind of was doing, the Anderson Silva move where it's almost like he's faking being hurt. He's like Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Where he's Captain Jack Sparrow's walking around like he's drunk, acting drunk. To me, that's kind of what Hokit looked like at points. Now, maybe he just was rocked and he's thinking, you know what, maybe I'll look a little bit fake rocked because then the judges won't know if I actually am or not. Interesting strategy, bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it pays out. And it obviously plays out with a win. This does elevate Josh Hokit now to another level in this division, a division that honestly a lot of people like to shit on, right? They have fighters that people like. Obviously, Aspinall has a big following. Pereira, Poatan, my favorite fighter in the UFC, he has a big following. But people like Gane, but I don't like Gane. I don't know. None of my friends like Cyril Gane, right? They have other fighters too, but this really elevates Josh Hokit, and now he gets to fight on the White House lawn June 14th on a Sunday up against Derek Lewis. Now, in my opinion, Derek Lewis at this point in his career is kind of just, he's going to go out there, and if he doesn't put you out cold, if he doesn't put you out on ice within, the first 2 minutes of the fight, he's going to gas out, he's going to get tired, and Josh Hokit is going to diddle this guy, metaphorically, of course, and it's not going to go well for Derek Lewis. I like Derek Lewis, but again, it kind of just seems like, you ever read that book where the guy goes to tend to the rabbits and he gets whacked out? That's kind of what's going to be happening here for Derek Lewis. I think that Josh Hokit's going to win that easily. And Curtis Blaydes, is kind of just past the time where people were talking up Curtis Blaydes. This fight actually shifted as we got closer and closer to metaphorical kickoff or, glove touching, whatever, walk out, whatever you want to call it. Right? As the fight got closer to actually taking on the action, we saw Josh Hokit become the favorite in the betting lines. So, I wasn't very surprised by how Hokit fought, but I think a lot of people were because they thought he was just fugazi. They thought, hey, he beat all these guys. These guys are fucking bums. Curtis Blaydes is going to be the gatekeeper. And that is just simply not what happened. He couldn't hold the door. Shout out to Hodor. And Josh Hokit walked right through him. Very fun fight. Legitimately might be the best heavyweight fight I've ever seen. Action-packed, back and forth. Very fun. Both of these guys deserve way more money than they are being given by the UFC. That was one of the most fun fights I've seen in a while. And just action-packed. And normally you see these guys just straight up gas in heavyweight. And, one of them just chins the other guy. And that's not what happened. They were both beating the shit out of each other. It was awesome. And I would love to, if every single UFC card had a fight like this, you'd be so much happier. But that's obviously never going to be the case. But shout out to Josh Hokit. Then we got Dominick Reyes versus Johnny Walker. So we just went from straight up peak, right? A all-out war in the octagon. A battle of two fat bastards going at it. A really fun time. And the fight before this was a straight up snooze fest, right? If I told my friends who don't watch the UFC, so my friends don't watch the UFC, I would have told them before this, hey, if you want to watch a fight for the first time, watch Dominick Reyes versus Johnny Walker. Both of these guys' chins are gone, in my opinion, and someone's getting knocked out, right? But instead, nothing happens. It legitimately might have been one of the most boring fights I've seen in a while. And it's because they didn't even really fight. Like, it doesn't feel like when this ended, oh, look at that. Dominick Reyes wins. It didn't have any feeling to it. Now, I was happy because I bet on Dominick Reyes. But had I have not placed a bet on this, I would have just thought that was I still thought this was the worst fucking fight I've seen in a long time. I don't know what Johnny Walker was doing. I don't know what Dominick Reyes was doing. I do think, at least when I was watching the fight, and I'm not going to rewatch this. I do rewatch fights every once in a while. I would never rewatch this. This one, I watched it. I'll probably forget about it by next week, okay? That's how unmemorable this was. I think Dominick Reyes did a couple of times, at least once, kind of crack Johnny Walker, pause. He got him good, but ultimately these guys were just fucking kicking each other. It was lame, and it was embarrassing because, again, everyone going, not just me, I didn't just think this. I'm not the only person. Everyone thought Johnny Walker or Dominick Reyes, one of these guys getting colded, one of these guys is getting rolled up in a spliff and smoked. And instead, it's terrible. It's a disaster. Like, if you look at this, like, the first round, Dominick Reyes punched him through 19 punches. 19 total strikes, I guess, not just punches. 10 connected. 17 connected of 28 for Johnny Walker. 9 of 19, 13 of 28, and 15 of 35, and 12 of 24. And just when you think, you know what, maybe in the last 10 seconds, they're going to, hit the thing. They know it's 10 seconds. Maybe these guys, Max Holloway, point to the ground, go toe-to-toe. No, it still just fucking sucks. What a absolute disaster of a fight that was. I mean, Dominick Reyes, congratulations for winning, but I don't think anyone in the right mind will ever think of that fight again. Then we got Cub Swanson getting the swan song finish to his career up against Nate Landwehr. Now, this was a fight that went the way in terms of the betting lines towards Cub Swanson, and Cub Swanson, this was a masterclass. This was one of the best fights I've ever seen out of Cub Swanson, and it was his retirement fight. Now, back in the day, when these guys, not even just back in the day, a couple years ago, if you knew someone was going to retire, you might as well take out the 401k, take out your children's college fund, and throw it on the guy that's going up against the guy that's going to retire, because you don't get that fun ending in the UFC. But now we've seen back-to-back events, right? Was that 2 events ago? Whatever, where we see guys go out with a nice W in the first round, and Cub Swanson beat the shit out of Nate. This wasn't just a light beating. This wasn't like, oh, Unk kind of still got it. He wins the decision. It's a split decision. It's a close decision, right? No, this was just straight up domination, and it was awesome to watch. Cub Swanson puts an ending to his career, beating Nate. Now, I think some people will say, like, how can you retire after you just did that? But at the same time, that's like a greedy move. You get greedy. Maybe he tries to fight a guy that's lower ranked in the featherweight division. Maybe he's like, you know what? Let me take on the 15th, the 14th, the 13th ranked guy, right? And you go up there and you get knocked out, or you get triangle choked, you get rear naked choked. You've been embarrassed in front of your whole family when you could have just retired off of a triumphant win. I think that's a smart move for Cub Swanson. But as we know, in MMA, guys retire, but are they ever actually retired? But congratulations to Cub Swanson for that win. And then we're going to be talking about the prelims a little bit as well. Patricio Pitbull versus Aaron Pico, the battle of the Bellator boys. And Aaron Pico looked incredible in this fight. I think there's an argument to be made that Aaron Pico could have won all 3 rounds. Patricio Pitbull looked fine at the beginning, but after that, it was kind of just all downhill. It was like, when you're watching, what movie was that? Indiana Jones, the first one, right? When the ball's chasing him, right? And he's just running and running and running. But instead, this was, the alternate edition where Indiana Jones gets fucking flattened by the ball that's rolling, the stone. That's what happened to Patricio Pitbull. Great performance out of Aaron Pico. Again, neither of these guys are super big needle movers for me. These are not guys I'm super excited to watch. But I do think Aaron Pico showed me enough to where it's like, you know what? Next time he fights, if he's on the main card, I get it. I don't love it, but especially if it's like a numbered event. But I am definitely interested to see more of Aaron Pico, and hopefully Patricio Pitbull figures it out. Then we got Kevin Holland versus Randy Brown. I think Randy Brown in this fight, I know he had some success at points, but this really was just all Kevin Holland. The last round was kind of just Randy Brown being like, you know what? I don't want to get knocked out cold. I don't want to get submitted. I'm just going to kind of stand here and hope that Kevin Holland doesn't chin me, right? That's what it kind of felt like at the end. Kevin Holland wins, and Randy Brown just didn't want to go out. He wanted to make it to the decision. And that was another solid win by Kevin Holland. He looked good enough in that fight. I don't think we're ever going to be talking about Kevin Holland super positively. I don't think anyone's really going to be all in on Kevin Holland at any point, because at this point, in my opinion, I wouldn't have been shocked if Randy Brown beat him. going in, if I would have made predictions on the prelims, I probably would have said, I think Randy Brown probably could come out with the W. Then we got Gamrot versus Ribovic, and Gamrot gets the W by submission in the second round. I think that Gamrot is very much a fun guy to watch when he can actually get to finish, but we haven't really seen a lot of finishes out of him. And this was just kind of a fight where Ribovic it just didn't feel like it was his night, in my opinion. It wasn't really written in the stars, like how I said, before the fight, Yuri's having his kid in a couple of days. It's written in the stars that he's going to win. It was not written in the stars for tonight for him. Tatiana Suarez beats Lupi Godinez. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I couldn't give less of a fuck about this fight. I did watch it. Congratulations to Tatiana for winning by sub in the second round, but no, congrats to, her family who was probably watching, really, really, really locked in. Then we saw Padilla versus Medeiros. This was a draw. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't necessarily think this should have been a draw. I'm fine with the draw here, but in the UFC, to me, I don't really like draws. I think in certain scenarios, a draw is fine. Let me know what you guys thought about this one. Then we had Like versus Kevin Gastelum. Something about how Kevin Gastelum looks just pisses me off. I don't know if anyone else feels that way. I like Vicente Luque. I was happy that he was able to get the win in round one. And again, it's just because I'm not really a big Kevin Gastelum guy. And if you're wondering why I'm not talking too much about these prelim fights, it's because to me, none of this stuff on the early prelims, none of this really, wowed me, whereas the earlier fights, I think there's a lot more to talk about. And then we saw, I did not mean to click on that. Then we saw Radke beat Prado. Radke gets on the mic and is just crazy on the mic. Some people might like it. Some people might hate it. No idea why he would do that, for a second time. Not the best look for him, but does get a win here up against Prado. So let me know what you guys thought about this card as a whole. To me, again, I'm thinking this is like a 7 to 8 out of 10, especially the main card outside of Dominick Reyes versus Johnny Walker was a banger, right? Paulo Costa versus Azmat, banger. Josh Hokit versus Curtis Blaydes is a certified hood classic. Absolute cinema. Walker versus Reyes. You might as well have went to go take a dump for 15 minutes. You would have had more fun. You would have had more fun watching paint dry. Cub Swanson, that was a great, not the most back and forth fight, but a nice W for Cub Swanson on the way out. Again, I was very impressed by Pico. Kevin Holland kind of does his thing, and the rest of it is kind of just meh. But if we're talking just about the main card, it's definitely one that was very enjoyable. Hopefully Yuri can figure it out going forward. I don't know why he uses his samurai way and just kind of feels bad for Carlos in a way and just gets knocked out. It was stupid, but thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys did end up enjoying. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you did end up enjoying. Love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys later with another video. As always, good boy!